still alive, but I'm barely breathing. Just bring.
When Jourdan Blue stepped onto the America's Got Talent stage, the atmosphere shifted in a way that felt almost physical, as if the entire studio took a collective breath without realizing it. Everyone saw a young man with a microphone, but beneath the surface was a storm of survival, heartbreak, and hard-won hope waiting to unfold in front of millions. The judges leaned in, sensing something unusual, not the polished confidence of a seasoned performer, but the grounded stillness of someone who had lived through nights far darker than the bright stage lights around him. That quiet energy left the room suspended, and before a single note left his mouth, people watching could tell this wasn't going to be an ordinary audition. It was the moment a dreamer who once sang under flickering street lamps was finally seen under the brightest lights in America. His presence alone carried the weight of lived pain and the relentless belief that even the most battered stories deserve a chance to be heard. That unspoken tension, that fragile anticipation, created a silence so heavy it felt like destiny was waiting at the edge of the stage for him to open his mouth and reveal everything life had carved into his voice. Jourdan's journey didn't begin with applause or opportunity, but with struggle layered thicker than most people can imagine. Long before talent shows and viral clips, he was a teenager fighting battles no young person should face. Expulsion from school, broken trust, and the kind of loneliness that carves permanent marks on the heart. At 16, life spun violently out of control, pushing him toward the streets where survival replaced stability and danger erased any sense of childhood. Nights blurred into one another as he slept on benches, hid in public bathrooms, and tried to keep his belongings from getting stolen. Fear became a constant companion, but so did an unexplainable spark inside him, a tiny ember of hope that refused to burn out. Most would have been crushed under the weight of that reality, but Jourdan absorbed it, transforming every bruise into a deeper understanding of resilience. These weren't experiences he wanted, but they were experiences that shaped him, tightening the emotional fibers of his voice until every note carried both the ache of what he lost and the fire of what he still dreamed to become. His music wasn't born in comfort, it rose from crisis. When Jourdan reached his breaking point, the universe handed him a lifeline through the person who saw value in him even when the world didn't, his grandfather. The intervention wasn't dramatic or glamorous. It was simple, steady, and exactly what he needed. His grandfather opened his door and gave him something he hadn't felt in years: stability. With that came clarity. For the first time since his life unraveled, Jourdan had a moment to breathe and sense where his heart was trying to lead him. Music, once an emotional escape, now revealed itself as a calling. His grandfather didn't just offer shelter, he offered a mirror that showed Jourdan his worth. That support helped him stitch together the pieces of himself that trauma had torn apart. Each conversation at the dinner table, each ride to a rehearsal, each "I believe in you" became the backbone of a future that previously felt impossible. This was the turning point that allowed him to transition from surviving to rebuilding. Without that quiet, unwavering love, the voice that captivated millions might have never found its way back into the world. His grandfather didn't just give him a home, he gave him direction. The streets of New Orleans forged Jourdan's voice in fire. Bourbon Street, with its unpredictable crowds, clashing sounds, and chaotic energy, became his training ground. Night after night, he hauled speakers, set up makeshift equipment powered by a car battery, and sang with everything he had, sometimes for a crowd, sometimes for no one. What he learned there couldn't be taught by vocal coaches or perfected in studios. He mastered how to command attention in an environment where people barely looked up, how to project emotion over traffic noise, and how to make strangers stop in their tracks long enough to feel something real. He navigated the risk of police shutdowns, competition for performance spots, and the constant fear of theft. Yet in these gritty conditions, his confidence sharpened. Cell phones came out, people recorded, some cried, some walked away speechless. His voice became a living testament to survival, rough, soulful, powerful, and honest. And as videos of his performances started spreading online, it became clear that the streets didn't just shape his artistry. They prepared him for the moment destiny would call his name on national television. What started as a few tourists posting clips soon spiraled into something far bigger than anyone expected. Jourdan's voice, raw, emotional, and unfiltered, began echoing through TikTok and Instagram, drawing millions of views within weeks. People weren't just impressed, they were moved. Comments poured in from listeners who saw pieces of their own struggles reflected in his sound. That digital momentum transformed him from a local talent into a rising figure admired across states and countries. With every share, duet, and remix, his songs traveled farther, reaching people who needed the kind of honesty he delivered. Social media became a megaphone for the voice the world didn't know it was missing. And for the first time, Jourdan realized he wasn't just surviving anymore, he was connecting. The streets gave him practice, but the internet gave him reach. Without marketing teams or industry backing, he built something authentic, a community bound not by genre, but by shared emotion. People followed him not because he was perfect, but because he was real. As his following grew, Jourdan recognized that his visibility came with responsibility. He knew what it felt like to lose friends, to wrestle with trauma, and to hide pain behind a smile. Rather than running from those memories, he used them as fuel for something bigger. He began singing at mental health events, lending his voice to conversations about depression, addiction, and survival. Every performance doubled as a testimony, not only of what he endured, but of what others were still facing. He became a bridge for people searching for hope in their darkest moments. And as he partnered with local outreach groups, his music evolved into more than entertainment. It became a form of healing. He offered guidance to young artists who felt overlooked and shared openly about the stigma surrounding emotional pain. Jourdan wasn't just raising awareness, he was normalizing vulnerability. His advocacy showed that personal struggle doesn't diminish someone's worth, it amplifies their humanity. In giving space for others to feel seen, he continued the cycle of support that once saved him. When Jourdan walked onto the AGT stage, his shoes still carried the dust of New Orleans sidewalks, symbolizing the journey from street corners to national spotlight. The judges saw a soft-spoken young man, but the audience unknowingly braced for a performance that would cut through the room like lightning. Standing in that spotlight, he wasn't just singing to win, he was singing to honor every version of himself that had once been lost or abandoned. As he introduced his story, speaking of trauma, survival, and the grandfather who saved him, the audience felt a collective shift. His vulnerability wasn't a tactic, it was truth. And when the music began, the room froze. Each note vibrated with lived experience, each lyric carried emotional weight, and every breath felt like a bridge between his past and the new life he was stepping into. AGT has seen thousands of auditions, but few moments have carried the quiet intensity that Jourdan delivered. Jourdan chose Break-Even, but what he delivered wasn't a cover. It was an autobiography disguised as a song. He stripped the original down and rebuilt it with raw emotion, turning every lyric into a memory and every vocal crack into a confession. His voice wasn't flawless, and that's exactly what made the performance unforgettable. It lived in the imperfections, the grit, the tremble of someone who had endured more nights of pain than applause. His eyes carried the weight of the Bourbon Street attack, the loneliness of homelessness, and the healing shaped by second chances. The audience didn't just hear him, they felt him. When he FaceTimed his grandfather mid-performance, the entire room dissolved into emotion, witnessing a bond that had survived chaos and sculpted hope. That vulnerability cemented the moment as one of the most profound in AGT history. When Howie Mandel hit the golden buzzer, the room erupted with sound, light, and overwhelming emotion. Confetti burst above him, but this wasn't just television spectacle. It was years of struggle finally breaking open to reveal something victorious. Jourdan stood under the falling gold like someone witnessing his own rebirth. His reaction wasn't polished or rehearsed, it was genuine shock, disbelief, and gratitude mixing into a moment that felt too big for words. Social media exploded within minutes. Millions watched, cried, commented, and shared. Jourdan's name soared across platforms, trending in multiple regions as fans rallied around his story. Interviews poured in, new fans arrived hourly. Record labels took notice. But the most powerful reaction came from New Orleans itself, where people celebrated him not just as a singer, but as a survivor who carried their city's heartbeat onto the world stage. The golden buzzer wasn't a finish line, it was the ignition spark of a movement. Jourdan's rise represents more than personal success. It symbolizes the triumph of resilience over circumstance. From homelessness to hope, from anonymity to national recognition, his journey proves that authenticity still matters in a world obsessed with perfection. People connect with him not because he's flawless, but because he's human. Through every interview, performance, and message, he continues to lift voices that often go unheard. His plans to build mental health programs, support youth, and create safe spaces for young artists reveal a mission far bigger than fame. Jourdan's story shows that you don't need privilege, connections, or a perfect past to make a difference. You need courage, honesty, and the belief that your story is worth sharing. And in lifting himself, he has lifted others.